Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, this video is going to be shorter than I want it to be, which is probably merciful because I usually make long videos. I just haven't had a heck of a lot of time to make videos since RPG A Day was over. And I don't know if you noticed, if you really care, the last few videos I put up were live plays, and they're actually ones that I ran. And one of the games that I ran was our 5th session of the Veil. And so, as is our custom and tradition in this group and some other groups I'm in, we make some recap, reflection type videos after the game. And this was a really good session. This, I think we all agreed that we all finally relaxed, and it was one of the most fun sessions that we've had as a group. And we're playing a multiple game master experiment. So same old G ran 3 sessions. I'm running 3 sessions. This will be my last one tonight because I'm running a session tonight, which is why I'm making this reflections video now, because I have to. And then Anthony's going to run the last 3 sessions. And outside of that, I believe same old G ran a solo session for my character. I ran a solo session for his character. Nobody's going to run a solo session for Cadmus because Cadmus dies. Anthony's character is the dying, and he literally plays the dying playbook, so that character is going to die. They're destined to die, and it works out great because tonight, one way or the other, Cadmus dies. It was a lot of fun. We talked about this a lot. The video that I put up on from the live play, it's 4 hours long. We played for probably 2.5, a little over 2.5 hours, and then we talked for at least an hour afterwards. And I actually downloaded that. I'm going to split them into 2 videos so they're a little bit more digestible, because the talk afterwards was really, really cool. As we just did a lot of our reflections, in the moment. And some of the things that really stuck out to me, so I'm going to be repeating some of the stuff that we said, was, that it was really great to play with 2 really active players, people that were just really good at taking the bull by the horns. They're both sticklers for procedure and protocol, so we were sticking to the rules, which was cool, and they helped me out where there were a couple times where I just wasn't quite sure what to do, because the playbooks have an awful lot of stuff going on in them. And sometimes we had discussions about, like, what would be the best way to handle this. In fact, we had discussions afterwards about some of the ways I handled some things, and some alternate ways that same old G might have handled it or whatever, which was cool because, once again, different, game masters getting together, talking about, how would I adjudicate this particular part, not making a rule up, but like, how would I interpret this rule, or which move would I use in this particular situation. That was really interesting. But part of what I got to do in this game, because it is a powered by the apocalypse game, was kind of set back, and I use my regular game master style, but this allowed me to really even take another step back, let the players create a lot of the details about the world. We even talked about that, the fact that I'm not a real description heavy GM, and same old G was able to fill in a lot of descriptions. Both of them were had narrative freedom to make up more stuff about the world. Mostly what I had to do as a game master was kind of keep track of what we'd already established as canon in the past, and then kind of push at them, depending on what their motivations were, what the goals, or the what the heck do they call them in this game? Now I'm drawing a blank here, kids, because I'm tired and I need to take a nap before this other game. But they're beliefs, because the beliefs in the Veil, they really aren't beliefs there, and we talked about this quite a bit. They're more like goals. One of the things that we talked about in general was, and especially we started doing this after the solo session that I ran for Same Old G, is we quit trying to pretend that the moves didn't exist, that we were trying to run the game purely narratively and just, infer what move we were going to use, based upon what we said. Instead, we decided, let's just name the mechanics, like you normally do. And the game went much, much smoother. We were able to have those discussions of, okay, what mechanic we're using here, what are we going to implement, and then go right back to the in-character play. And it was much, much smoother. That was one of the things that we talked about afterwards, was that it's interesting. In a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games, or games inspired by the Apocalypse, you see a lot of people playing them in a much more writer's room fashion. And in fact, a lot of times the examples given in the books can be very writer's room. And what I mean is, you talk an awful lot about, what would this look like? And, is it time to do this? Is it time for this particular part in the fiction? What would be, necessary here, or whatever? And then there's very little in-character dialogue, but the people seem to be having a good time. There's nothing wrong with that. And the way we naturally tended to kind of play this game without having this real explicit, like, social contract, this is what we're going to do, we tended to focus on, what the mechanics were, let's do this correctly, and then go right back into kind of more of an in-character as the character stance, and that seemed much more natural. I don't believe that we played the game wrong. It was just an aesthetic choice, as Same Old G brought up. And that was really kind of neat to see, just that there's different ways to play this type of game without playing it wrong. And one way is not better, but there are different ways to actually play the game. So that was a kind of a neat thing to kind of discover, happening, I don't want to say organically, but it seemed to be more of our basic style versus, the style of some other people. Again, you can find lots of live plays or actual plays of people playing it in a somewhat different, more writer's room manner. But that was really kind of neat, seeing, how that happened. It also kind of brought home for me, something that's not just something I experienced in Powered by the Apocalypse games, but in other games where I'm not quite completely comfortable with the system and the protocols and the procedures. One of the things that these particular games tend to do is there's things that I would normally do naturally as a game master, because one of the things I do believe is a lot of PBTA types games, Apocalypse World and the offspring thereof, is they kind of distill a lot of the best practices, or some of the, at least one of the ways that people play. And there's times where, like, oh, I know what I would do here, but I have to make sure, am I stepping on the protocols? Is this a breach of protocol to do this? So every once in a while I get a little uncomfortable. And, the more I run it, the more I see how it's played, the easier it is for me. But that is one of those things that, I have noticed about myself as a game master that I run into. Let's see, we got this new cat. She wants my attention. Is that sometimes I'm not sure. I know what I would do instinctively, but I have to make sure, am I actually following the protocol of the game? But it was really neat. The other thing that we found, in something like The Veil, it's really, really odd, because you look at the playbooks, and each one of the playbooks in that game seems to be like it should be the main character in a science fiction story. In fact, I'm sure a lot of them were kind of yanked out of some sci-fi stories. The dying, the character that's going to die, the seeker that Same Old G is playing, the apparatus that Tess is playing. Is she human or not? She's not human, but what does it mean to be human? All these various playbooks, they seem to not fit with one another. They seem like, why would you put all these singular or focused characters all together? But one of the things that this game seems to do, or force you to do, is to figure out, well, how do these disparate characters actually fit? And one of the neat things that happened over time as we played was we were able to draw connections, once again, kind of organically, and the game kind of became about this existential, like, what does it mean to be alive? What's the actual definition of human? The nature of existence, all this kind of stuff. And all these characters kind of fit together all of a sudden in this really cohesive manner, where before, just looking at them, it wouldn't have made any sense at all. So I'm really looking forward to tonight's game, and then seeing what Anthony does when he runs the two of us in our 3 sessions. But I'm enjoying this experiment more and more. And, it's really been neat to kind of like, exhale, make our peace with how the mechanics work, and just be okay with, naming them. And then, playing it a little bit more, I don't say normal, but the way I'm more used to, where you name the mechanic for a second, you have the mechanical discussion, and go right back to role play. You kind of have to have those 2 conversations. And we talked about that an awful lot as well. So I guess the video wasn't as short as I thought it was going to be. But I am enjoying it, and we'll see what happens next.